Yeah, I was definitely, not 100%, and I didn't even feel like going until we had already been scheduled to be together for an hour. So
Yeah.
I think it was a good decision to postpone it for me.
Do you think the Americans are going to betray Israel?
Oh man, what a question. Heavy question.
Well, the so-called elected in the administration has taken a stand that they want to renew that Iran thing, and that's a direct threat against Israel.
Yeah, it is.
And they're
Yes.
the most pro-abortion administration in U.S. history,
Yeah.
which is against all of the Lord's people. So if that comes into effect,
There's no protection after that, is it?
well, the word to Abraham was, anybody that curses you is going to be cursed. I wonder what this country will look like if it's under a curse from God.
Boy.
It would be looking a lot like Sodom and Gomorrah, I think. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, we'll have those, I'm going to call them fools in the Democratic Party, think that being friends with people like that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, that's foolishness, all right.
It is. And, if that's the way they want to go, then they're going to have Iran coming from the east and Korea coming from the west.
Yeah. Well, the only hope we have is that Sodom would have had would be if there'd have been 10 righteous guys there, it would have been saved.
Yeah.
Maybe there's 10 in America, I don't know. Hope so.
Yeah, there was a lot of craziness, but I don't think it was all genuine either.
Well, not only a bad administration, but one that got there by obvious fraud like mad.
Obvious fraud.
And theft and all kinds of stuff. So,
And
talk
this
about an invitation to be cursed. What more could you ask?
and this little buffer period right now, when the Trump administration was talking about going to court and stuff,
Yeah.
which that's how Trump's done his whole life. He's always had a lawyer on retainer.
Yeah.
Every time something goes wrong, he goes to court because he believes in the court of law. And these jokers, all they believe in is control
Yeah.
and manipulations, even in the judicial. So there ain't a whole lot of hope. I mean, I think the parable is quite beautiful though, because I'm not pumping up Trump. I'm just saying that born within him is a symbolism.
Yeah.
He's a builder. That's what he does. That's what he did. That's his whole life. He was a builder. He made deals with people. Sometimes it went good, sometimes it didn't go good, but he was always optimistic. He always came out and he was always putting one brick on top of the other.
Yeah.
For the good of other people and for himself. But like Joe Biden's been a politician ever since I've been alive, and what's he got to show for it except being a politician? And I don't think our country was meant to have professional politicians. And what else is he?
Yeah.
If you have a career that's 50 years long, you're a career politician.
They're
And
supposed to be called public servants.
yeah.
Who are they serving? Public or who?
Well, it's obvious. All that stuff that the big media company swept under the rug that was coming out about his son, that was obvious. Obvious. I mean, they have pictures of the guy doing stuff he shouldn't, not to mention all the phone calls and all the side crooked deals. And it's not like it's an accusation. It's proof. It's like the pictures tell you.
Well, they keep saying there's no evidence.
Yeah.
We've been all over that 100 times, but the bottom line issue is
hear about it tonight.
Yeah. It's a very powerful lesson in 17, like there is in all the numbers and all the letters.
Well, I heard your Alicia's doing better. Home from the hospital.
Yeah, apparently
anyway.
these, that from what I gather, they can't do much with it until they get these seizures under control, and they are apparently reduced them quite a bit. So hopefully it'll do better. I don't know.
We'll see how an earlier meeting time will work out for us.
Yeah. Guess we could have parked in McDonald's lot there.
Too many distractions for me.
A lot of lights going on there, isn't there? Yeah. You didn't bring your little contraption today, did you?
I did. It's right
Oh, yeah.
up by my feet.
There's a note, a 17 note right there for you.
All right. Hey.
Okay. Some rabbis pronounce it peh, but the source that I use says it sounds just like the word pay, P-A-Y.
Yud and a cough.
Yes. Can you see the cough?
Yeah.
And can you see the yud?
Yep.
Okay. Those are extremely important parts of it, like every letter. But their symbolism is powerful. You know what yud is? The symbol of yud. What does it mean?
It's a hand.
The hand. And the symbolism, the number for yud is it's the 10th. Number 10. So what it is about 10?
That's the authority of God.
Yeah, absolute authority, rulership. And how about Kaf? What's with the Kaf?
Cough is an open hand.
Yes. And what's the number for Kaf?
Cough, Laman, Mem, Noon, Summit. Is it, I can't remember. Cough, Laman, Mem, Noon, Summit. So it's, is it 12?
No, but I can't remember it myself right off the top.
Okay. Yod. What's after Yod?
Well, let's see. Mem is
Mem's 13, right?
13. Lamed is
Lamed, Mem, Noon. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tet, I think, is that 11? Boy, I tell people what these things are, and then I forget myself. Well,
it should say so in here, doesn't it?
The important thing about Kaf is that it's the open hand.
Yeah.
And I did a little visual presentation on that. I'll show you what I did. Once I get stopped here.
Samach was 16, right?
Samach is
Which one was last week? Or last time? 16?
15 or 16. That would have been oh man, my mind goes blank.
I might have it in my pocket.
Well, listen, hold something up. Hold that up. Okay, now. By me holding my hand like this, what am I doing?
Reaching out for it.
I'm asking you to give it to me, right?
Yeah.
So, in Isaiah 65, it says, all day long, I held out my hand.
Yeah.
Disobedient, gainsaying people. What is he holding out his hands for?
He's reaching out to help.
Well, by holding it out, if you're doing like this, you're holding your hands out to somebody who's disobedient. You're holding your hands out. What are you doing?
Saying, come here.
You're saying, come to me. That's exactly, it's an invitation to come. So the hands held out. Now, kaf, or pei, is made of a kaf and a yud. And the yud, in the most of it, the one that's on there is not exactly right, but the yud is usually marked upside down.
Uh-huh.
Like it's reaching down from up high, reaching down to us. Ordinarily, if you hold up your hand, you'd hold it with your fingers upward, but if it's held upside down, downward, you're reaching down to something.
I do have it right here.
Okay.
So it's Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yud, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech.
Okay, tet is number 9 then, right? Yud is 10.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. 9 is Tet. Yud's 10. Kaf is 11.
Okay, 11. Yeah. And kaf.
I had them in order. I just didn't have
kaf
them
means
in position.
The number 11 really means being either short or overreached, too much or too little. Yet Yud is 10, which means everything is perfect authority. To go beyond that to 11 is like trying to overstep God's authority. 12 represents God working with his people, but 11 is coming short of that. So it's either too much or too little. No matter what you're doing or what you're talking about, if there's either too much or too little, what does it mean? No matter what it is. You can be talking about fuel consumption, you can be talking about time you have, you can be talking about something to eat or whatever it is you're talking about. If there's either too much or too little,
it's just not right.
It's not right.
Yeah.
Because when things are right, it's just the right amount. It's neither too much or too little. So 11 represents the failure of people. But so why is the Lord holding out his hands to a disobedient? Why is he doing it?
It's because of who he is. He's kind and giving and good and wants to help us.
Yeah, because they are either too much or too little, they failed, and so he's holding out his hands to bring them back into success.
Yeah.
If he brings them back, he'll bring them back under the authority of God and the recipients of God working with his people. And so
bring them back into fellowship.
An open hand is what we would extend to him to say,
off.
What?
I think your lights are on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Remember when the open hand says, let me have what it is you're offering. I want it. I'll take it. Give it to me. You know, when the Lord was speaking to that Samaritan woman at the well in Samaria, he said, if you asked me for water, I would give it to you. So what happened?
She asked.
She asked for it. She did say, give it to me. Did she understand what he meant by that?
Not really.
Does it matter whether she understands or not?
No.
You ask the Lord for his blessing. You have to. The Lord says, well, I'll give it to you once you understand it. He never says that. He gave it to her. She understood it later, but it changed her life, didn't it?
Yeah.
So obviously he gave it to her. But number 17 is an interesting number. In Numbers 14:30, I think it says that they were commanded Moses and them to take a census of the people. It's called a second census. And the reason they were to take a census, they were to count all the males aged 20 or older who were able to do military service. So at age 20, they were literally being drafted in the military because of the Moabites against them. So 20 was the time, the age that they reached where they'd be ready to serve the country in the military.
Mm-hmm.
What about 17? So a young guy that's 17, he's not 20, so he would not qualify for that census, would he?
Mm-mm.
He'd be called too young. However, he's not very far away from it, and he's nearly approaching it. When David went after Goliath, he was probably about 17. Now, when Goliath saw him, what did he think he was looking at? What did Goliath see?
He said a dog.
Yeah, but related to age 17, what did he see?
A boy.
You're just a kid. You're not qualified to be a soldier. You're too young. And so, in fact, when King Saul looked at David, what did he see? What did King Saul see? He saw David. What did he see?
He saw him for who he was, I guess.
What was he seeing there?
Young man.
How did he describe him?
Whippersnapper.
You're just a kid.
Yeah.
And that's a veteran soldier out there. This guy's been in many wars. He's killed thousands of guys, and he's ready to kill all of us. And what are you? You're just a 17-year-old kid. You're not ready to do it.
So what did he let him go out there for?
Well, obviously God intervened here, but was David, even though he was 17 perhaps, and according to the rule would not be qualified to fight Goliath, but was he qualified or not?
He was qualified because God was on his side.
So even though outwardly he was 17, he was fully able to be a soldier against the enemy, wasn't he?
Yes.
And of course, it was God's authority that made him what he is. 17 is 1 and 7.
God's numbers, right?
Well, what is 1?
God is 1.
Okay, what's 7?
Perfection.
And when you combine Almighty God with His perfection, you come up with 1 and 7, which is 8, right?
Yeah.
So what's 8?
New beginning.
Yes. What's the first word in the Bible?
In beginning.
Beginning. John 1, how does that start?
In the beginning.
Same word. What's the first letter in the Bible?
B. Bereshit.
No, that's the first word.
Yeah.
The first letter.
Bait.
Bait. What does bait mean?
House.
Yeah. Now, look at that letter pay.
Yeah.
It's made of a kaf and a yud, isn't it? But there's a hidden letter in there. It's the third letter. Can you see another letter in there?
Gimel?
No, not Gimel. You can see it if you look carefully. And it's hidden. It's a secret letter. Like all parables, you have to kind of look under the surface to see it.
Mm-hmm.
How about the space in the middle of the kaf?
That's what I was looking at.
That is actually, that particular letter doesn't show up very well, but it's a bait.
Oh, okay.
That hidden letter is bait. So Genesis says, in beginning, God created what?
The heaven and the earth?
Yeah, or the universe, right?
Yeah.
But the hidden thing that he was really creating was bait. Now, in Genesis 1, the bait is not just an ordinary bait. It's much bigger than all the other letters. When they write a letter larger than the other, we would call it a capital letter, but that's not the purpose of it. When we capitalize a word at the beginning of a sentence, why do we do it? Why is the first letter of a word in a sentence always capitalized?
To distinguish it from the other sentences.
Well, it just shows it's the starting word
Yeah.
in that sentence. It's
Yeah.
the beginning of the sentence. But that's not the reason they do it in Israel or in Hebrew. When they make the letter larger than the other, it means it's the most important one.
Huh.
It's more important. It's not just a regular bait. It's the most important bait of all. If bait means a house, what's the most important house there could ever be?
House of God.
Yeah. Proverbs 23, how does it end up?
And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Yeah. So the house of the Lord is the most important of all houses, is it not?
Yeah.
And that word house there doesn't necessarily. We think of a house meaning a structure, or a place with rooms in it that people live in. But when it says house, it doesn't necessarily mean a building. For example, when the Lord said, "I'm going to build a house and the gates of hell won't prevail," was he talking about a structure?
Mm-mm.
What was he talking about?
Talking about his kingdom.
And what's his kingdom?
It's all of his called people.
It's people, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if they referred to some guy who would say he was of the house of David, what would that mean?
Means he's either a supporter or genetically connected.
It may be a descendant of David.
Yeah.
So the house means the family or the posterity.
Yeah.
So when God created the heavens and the earth, he wasn't just creating a physical structure, he was also creating a house.
Yeah.
And what's his house?
The people of God.
Yeah, so the letter Pei is a open hand receiving the Yud that's handed down to them, and what is it offering them? If the Yud is representing God's hand reaching down, it's upside down, reaching down, and the Kaf is the open hand saying, "I want what you're offering." What is he? What's that hand offering to the one with the open hand?
Himself.
Well, the hidden letter is bait.
Uh-huh.
So what is he offering his people?
His dwelling place.
You can be part of this
Yeah.
bait, right?
Yeah.
Part of this house. 23 Psalm again. What does it say at the end?
I will dwell in the house of the Lord.
Why will I dwell in the house?
Because he has prepared it for me.
Well, he's prepared. He prepared the house is big enough for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not everybody will come. Why am I coming when others do not?
Because I want to go. That wasn't.
How is it shown that I want it? It's the Kaf, the open hand.
Oh,
Give it to
yeah,
me. I
yeah.
want what it is you're offering.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Kaf says?
Uh-huh.
Kaf says, I want what it is you're offering. Yud says, I'm handing it down to you. Handing you what? An opportunity to be part of this great house, the hidden bait. Now, when most people see a Pei, they do not see the bait. Why not?
It's hidden.
Because it's hidden. So, within the creation of God, you might say, the hidden thing that many people do not see. They argue about the outward things. They argue about the time created. They argue about evolution. They argue about how this and that came to be. But the Lord said there's something in there that's hidden that most people don't even see. That's the real reason for it to even be there. So usually when something is hidden, everything else is obvious. What is likely to be the most important thing?
That which is hidden.
Yeah. So a parable is made up of things that are obvious, but there's always a hidden thing in a parable. And if you miss the hidden thing, then the rest of it has no value to it, does it? So the value of any parable is what's hidden in it. So the value of Pei, the real value of it is what's hidden in it, is to be a member of the house of God. And that comes when we receive what he is handing us with the Yud.
That's good.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is.
So number 17, back to that.
Let's go do coffee.
Yeah.
You want coffee?
Yes, of course. That's
You weren't asking me for it, so I
I
figured
didn't think
I'd
about it
offer
till now,
it.
but it is one of the main reasons we come over here.
No,
Yes.
the main reason is because we got open
Bread
hands,
of life, huh?
willing
Yeah.
to receive what the Lord has for us.
Well, Joseph, the patriarch Joseph,
Joseph.
17 years old when he went out to see his brothers. Why did he go to look up his brothers?
That's where his dad sent him.
Yeah. So the reason he was going, there's two ways to look at it.
Carry his brothers some
What was the
sandwiches.
purpose of him going? Purpose is a little different than reason.
Yes, it is.
The purpose. What's the purpose?
to kill the enemy of.
No. Why did
What-
his father send him out?
To send his brothers nourishment.
Mm-mm. Doesn't say that.
Doesn't say that. To check on them?
Well, why do you want to check on them?
Because they were in battle. Make sure they're still alive.
No, they weren't in battle. You're talking about Joseph. He was the guy that...
Oh, I'm sorry.
What do we got there?
Cookies.
Oh.
Grab them till you don't want to grab them anymore.
Okay. Oh,
you got the chocolate chip one.
They're the good kind.
Yeah, that's that one, and they got that's the only one of that one, and there's coconut ones.
Yeah, save me one.
I'm sorry.
Okay, who was Joseph's father?
I was talking about David.
Who was Joseph's father?
Jacob.
Why did Jacob send Joseph out there?
Why did Jacob send Joseph out?
Yes.
I can't remember.
See how the brothers were doing. What were they doing? What were the brothers doing?
That's why I got it right, because I was thinking about David.
Well, you said he was sending him out there to take him stuff. He didn't take him anything. All he went toward because Jacob told him, go see how your brother's doing now. What was his brothers doing at that time?
Conspiring against him.
No, that's not what they were doing. They hated him, but before he went out, where were the brothers, the rest of them?
Out in the fields?
What were they doing?
Tending sheep?
Exactly. They were herding sheep. So Joseph is sent out there to see if everything's okay, see how they're going. So why did Jacob send him?
See how things were going?
Why does he care? What does it matter?
Because that's their prosperity.
No, it's much more than that. Why did God send Yeshua to the earth?
Save that which is lost.
Why did he want to save anybody?
He loves them.
So why did Jacob send Joseph out?
It's easy to say what you just said, but I want to know why.
Well, God sent Yeshua into the world because he loved them.
Right.
Why did Jacob send Joseph out to his brothers?
It's not a different reason, though, is it? I've been with you long enough to know that it's probably because he loves them, but I don't understand why.
Why he loved them? Because they were his.
Why he sent
his
Joseph?
son.
Because he loved him.
He loved Joseph, but when he sent Joseph out to the brothers, was Joseph walking into danger?
Yeah.
Now, we don't know if Jacob, I don't think Jacob thought that way.
Right.
But when God sent Yeshua into the world, did he know that he's going into danger?
Yeah.
Why did he do it?
Because of love.
Yes. The Lord clearly said to Nicodemus, the reason why salvation came is because God so loved the world. He sent the Son. That's what he said, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's exactly the same reason why Jacob sent Joseph. He loved his sons. He wanted to make sure they were all right. Now, he probably knew something about their animosity toward Joseph. I don't know. It doesn't say that. But we know they hated him, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they hate him?
Because they were jealous of him.
Okay, jealousy. Good enough. Now, before Joseph came out there, these guys were herding sheep, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Going from one place to the other out there in the desert. You think they'd been thinking about Joseph while they were out there herding sheep?
No.
I don't think so either. When's the first time they thought about Joseph in that scenario? When's the first time they thought about
They saw him coming?
When they saw him coming, they said, here comes that dreamer. He got a new title, didn't he?
Yeah.
What was his dreams about?
About the brothers serving him.
That's right. And, of course, that provoked amazing jealousy. But how old was Joseph?
About 17.
17. And what happens at 17? The period of time between 17 and 20. Remember what happened at 20?
You got counted for as a military guy.
Yeah. In other words, you're drafted into the military for the purpose of serving the country, right? Or being of service to do something for the country. So 20 was sort of brought up as the proper age to begin that. But what happens at 17? You're beginning to approach that. So 17 to 20, that 3-year period, is kind of like a time. It's about time to start thinking about what can I do for my country, not just being a kid and doing what kids do. It's time to leave 16-year-old stuff behind you and move on ahead, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So during Joseph's years between whatever time he was born till he was about 17, what did he do all during that time, Joseph?
After he met his brothers?
No, I said during the time from when he was a little kid up until he was 17, those years, what did he do during all those years? From the time he was born until he was about 17.
Did little kid stuff.
Well,
it's whatever boys do.
Didn't he help out with the farm? Didn't he say
sure
something?
He did, yeah.
We were harvesting grain, and your stocks of grain bowed down to mine, so obviously he was doing things that you do on a farm.
Yeah.
But his action of doing those things, it was sort of pictured by the dreams he had, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who sent the dreams?
The Lord did.
But what did those dreams accomplish?
They helped to drive that wedge of jealousy.
Yeah, they made the brothers hate him, didn't they?
Yeah.
So during that 16-year period from 1 to 17 or whatever it was, what did he actually do for the brothers during that time?
Nothing.
We don't see that he did anything for them. In fact, all that happened is the only mentions is that he provoked this terrible jealousy.
Yeah.
Was he wrong for doing that?
I don't know if he did it on purpose.
Well, he did it on purpose, but was he wrong for doing it? When he told him the dream, did he mean to tell it to him?
Oh, yeah.
Of course he did. He did it on purpose. Was that wrong then? Some people
I don't think so, no.
Some people would say it was arrogance.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. No, it wasn't wrong because it was from the Lord, and he was.
That's right.
You know, I know this guy. He works with me. He is like the engineer type thinker.
Mm-hmm.
He can hardly think in any way that's not a black and white issue.
Yeah.
And it's since he's a troubleshooter, it works perfectly for him because when he approaches a problem, he says, "Well, is it this? Is it this? Is it this?"
Yeah.
But people aren't like that though. People are prone to emotions, and like for instance, if your wife says, "Honey, did you do that thing for me?" Well, did you see me do it? Yeah. You can't approach it like that because it'll throw the whole relationship off. And so when I think Joseph was like that a little bit. I think he said, "Well, here's the facts behind the dreams. Boom, 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 boom." And I think factually it got to the emotions of the brothers, but I don't think Joseph was emotional when he was, or arrogant when he was delivering it, because it was just what it was. Well, I saw these 12 bundles of flax bending down to the main bundle, and
well.
So I don't think he was prideful.
Many years
he was just
later,
telling the facts.
many years later, after the story was almost done.
You ready for another cut?
Yes, the brothers came to him and they were afraid that he was going to destroy them for their actions to him. Yeah. But he said to them, "You guys meant this for evil, but what?
God meant it for good."
So what provoked David to announce his dreams?
The Lord.
It's obviously Spirit of God and urged him to tell those dreams.
Yeah, well, yeah. He wouldn't have known them otherwise.
It can't be arrogance. It had to be the Word of God. But we can see that the only thing that happened was he provoked them to hatred, didn't it?
Yeah.
When the Lord taught people at the temple or on the Sea of Galilee, or wherever he was he doing what God sent him to do, or was he just being arrogant?
You got the open hand over there. I was trying to hand you the whole bag.
Oh.
Here, you want to take the whole bag?
Okay.
You can work out of them. I'm sorry, I missed a question.
Here's the Lord teaching the people at the temple or at the Sea of Galilee or wherever he happened to be. What'd they think of what he had to teach?
Well,
generally
they accepted it.
They what?
They accepted it.
They did?
Well, that's a tricky question because some people did, some people didn't. It was the disciples who did, but in general, like especially the religious people, the Pharisees, rejected it.
So you're reneging on your first answer.
I'm an optimist. I was talking about the people who accepted him.
Well, I said generally when he taught, what was the general response?
In general, it was conflict.
It was pretty much like when Joseph told the brothers what he had to say.
Yeah.
What was the general response?
Conflict.
But he was 17. So in telling them his dreams, would you agree that it was the Spirit of God that provoked him to tell them that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Without a doubt.
What good did that do them?
What good did it do who?
The brothers. He told them his dreams. How'd that help them?
I don't know if we have any evidence that it dawned on them years later that was what this was, right? It dawned on Joseph.
Well, all we can know for certain is that it certainly provoked hatred in it, did it not?
Yes.
I mean, is there any doubt that they hated him?
No doubt.
All right.
No doubt.
So his telling them the dream provoked hatred. So the question again is, what good did it do them?
None.
But it did do good in a sense. It was starting them on the road to repentance, wasn't it? But it wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Remember, age 17 is like this period of time from when you're beginning to think about looking to serve your country, but you can't do it till you're 20.
Right.
So there's a period of sort of a looking ahead sort of a time, but not there yet. So we could say, yes, there was a great benefit ahead of them, but they weren't yet there, were they?
Right.
In fact, at the time after he told them the dreams, they were just in a state of intense hatred.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So he goes on, and finally he comes out to them, and he's 17 years old, and he's sent out there because Jacob sent him, just as God sent Yeshua into the world to save the world. But the minute he begins to talk, what it has provoked?
Wrath.
Here comes the enemy, the hatred.
Yeah.
So, John the Baptist was the forerunner of the Yeshua, the Savior. But what did they do to John the Baptist? They killed him.
Yeah.
Why? Why did they kill John?
Because he was telling them something they didn't want to hear.
What was he telling them?
Repent.
He was telling him Joseph's dreams, wasn't he? Wasn't he telling him exactly what Joseph told his brothers? You're going to bow down to what comes from God.
Yeah.
That's what John was telling him, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And they couldn't take that, so they killed him. So here comes Yeshua. They didn't like what he had to say, so what did they do with him?
And crucified him.
So here comes Joseph, and the brothers say, let's kill him. But one of them had a different idea.
Let's make some money off of it.
Which one was that? Do you remember?
Reuben?
I think it was Joseph or Judah. I mean
Judah. Yeah, I'll buy that.
No.
Reuben came up by later.
Yes, he wasn't there when things happened.
Right.
He'd gone off somewhere. But here's Judah. Now Judah, he had a very strange way of approaching it. He said, "Let's don't kill him. After all, he is our brother. Let's just sell him into slavery,
Yeah.
and then we'll make some money off of
You
him.
wouldn't do that to your brother.
After all, he's our brother." What a amazing way to respond, like saying this somehow makes it righteous. It makes it okay if we treat him like a brother. If we killed him, that'd be bad, but we can sell him for slavery, make some money off him. We'll never see him again, but we do that because he is our brother. How do you think that went over with the justice of God? But he was 17, so now he goes to see him, and they throw him into a pit. Along comes the Ishmaelites. They sell him to them. They take him to Egypt, sell him to the captain of the guard down there, Potiphar. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So now Joseph becomes Potiphar's servant. And who's Potiphar?
He was some kind of a ranking official, and
He's the government of Egypt, right? Part of it.
yeah.
And so Joseph now becomes his servant, or his household servant, a slave to him. What good did that do Potiphar?
In so much as he helped him out in his house, did him good.
What did he do for him?
He did all sorts of things.
Name 3 things that he did for him.
Didn't he manage his house, do his accounting, or?
Doesn't exactly say that, but it does say he served him, and he was obviously spent a lot of time in the house because he was in there when the woman came on him. But he did housework, he did chores, cleaning,
And it made
carrying out the garbage, going to the grocery store, shoveling the whatever.
And it made him profitable, right?
So he helped Potiphar in a very physical way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a very earthly way. We have no way to know whatever became of Potiphar. Do we know anything more about him?
No.
Did he ever become one of the Lord's people, or did he just die as a lost Egypt? We don't know anything about him, do we?
No, we don't know that.
But the only thing we know about him was that he listened to the lie of his wife, which was an accusation against Joseph. What was Joseph accused of?
Fornication.
Huh?
He was accused of fornication, right?
No, he wasn't. Accused of attempted rape.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's pretty important nuance, but yeah.
So Potiphar believed the accusation, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But what was it about the accusation? It was an absolute lie, wasn't it?
That's right.
Why didn't Joseph go ahead with the provocation of Potiphar's wife? Why didn't he do it?
Because he didn't want to betray his well, he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to sin against God. He didn't want to do anything like that. He didn't want to betray Potiphar.
Yeah, but what's the most important part? You just said
God. He didn't want to
So was his
betray God.
his situation an arrogant situation?
No.
What would you describe his situation as? What's his attitude?
He wants to do what's right and wants to be pleasing to God.
Yes, he wants to serve God.
Yeah.
So far, though, the service that he wants to serve God, what's he done with his brothers? His desire is to serve God, but what's he done with his brothers so far?
Nothing?
Yes, he has done a lot. He's got him provoked to hatred, hasn't he?
Okay,
That's a powerful operation.
Okay, I see.
It's a mighty operation. What has he done for Potiphar? Swept
Served.
his house for him, right? Carried out the garbage. That's nice. Did that save Potiphar?
Well, it helped him out, yeah.
did it send salvation to him? Joseph wanted to serve God. What did Potiphar get out of Joseph's service? He got a nice houseboy, didn't he?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And so now comes his evil wife, and she causes him to be charged with attempted rape. None of it was true, though, was it?
No.
But that's what her accusation was. So now he gets thrown into prison, and he becomes a prisoner. And what did he do while he was in prison?
He moved up in the prison too, didn't
What did he do?
he? He managed the prison well.
And he did it so well that the warden of the prison put him in full charge of everything.
Yeah.
Best prisoner he ever had. So what did all the prisoners get for whatever Joseph did?
They probably benefited because of the management that he gave.
Somehow his operations did the benefit. But how did the warden handle it? What did he get out of it?
He got a more calm prison.
He got a well-run prison without having to do anything to do it. But those benefits he got were just earthly things, weren't they?
Yeah.
But Joseph said, the reason I'm doing all this is he wants to serve God.
Yeah.
So now then, he finally gets rescued from the prison after he got the baker and the cupbearer's dreams interpreted and the things that came out of that. And then ultimately went into service to Pharaoh as a second in command of the entire country, does he not?
Yeah. He does the same thing for Pharaoh. He serves him, and his house benefits.
But what happened when he went into service to Pharaoh directly?
What happened?
Yeah.
Like with the whole scenario? Or with his brothers coming in and all that?
Well, did Pharaoh know anything about his brothers?
No.
Did he care anything? Well, that wasn't in Pharaoh's interest.
No.
Potiphar didn't care anything about it either. Potiphar bought him from his Ishmaelites.
That's right.
How about the Ishmaelites? Did Joseph do them any good?
Yeah, they made him some money, I'm sure.
Okay, so they made some money.
They commoditized him.
But up until Joseph went into Pharaoh's service, all the good they ever did for anybody was for their worldly present situation. He did them good. But what did it do to bring them salvation?
Nothing.
Nothing. But why was he doing it all?
To serve God.
Was he serving God?
Based upon what the Apostle John taught, yeah. When you serve God's people.
Based upon what you believe, was he serving God?
Yeah.
Okay. But all he was doing was just benefiting these people one way or another in a very worldly sense, wasn't he?
Uh-huh.
None of them got salvation because of what he did. Was there something wrong with what he was doing?
No.
But he was in that period between 17 and 20. You got to be 20 to go into actual service.
Yeah.
That's when you become a servant to the country. So when Joseph entered into Pharaoh's service after interpreting his dreams for him, things really began to change.
Yeah.
Remember, what was Pharaoh's dreams all about, in a nutshell? What were they about?
The famine.
Famine's coming. What will happen during the famine?
Going to have 7 years of hard times.
What will happen?
People are going to lose their lives.
If something isn't done about it, what's going to happen?
Everybody's going to be.
Everybody would. The whole world would die, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
What would happen to salvation for the world? What would happen to Joseph? What would happen to Pharaoh? What would happen to the Yeshua, to anybody? If they all died, what would happen to the 12 tribes of Israel? What would happen to Israel itself? The famine was there to destroy everything, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If it had destroyed everything that God created, what else would it do? I mean, it'd keep on going. It would destroy God, wouldn't it? If you can destroy what God has done, what can you do past that? You can wipe God out, can't you? So who instigated all these terrible things, you think? Did Pharaoh decide to have a famine?
No, God brought it about.
Well, God sort of introduced it, but the evil that comes on the world is not God's fault. It comes from demonic spirits, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So here's Joseph. Now, up until now, all Joseph has done is give people physical benefits, and they were good. He did a good job for Potiphar being his houseboy. He did a good job for the warden being the servant to the warden, did he not?
Yeah.
He helped us, no doubt, helped the prisoners who would have done terrible things or suffered terribly in a prison, but he probably made their life a lot better. It was all just earthly things. When did he begin to really serve the purpose which he was made for?
When he got to Pharaoh's house.
Yeah, because then he did something about this terrible famine that was coming. It was going to destroy the world. So you could say that 17, that period between 17 and 20 represents that preparation time from the time you made the decision, I'm going to start thinking about how can I serve God, until you're able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that he went through that same sort of a period. Everything he did was because he wanted to serve God, but it only served the outward interests of people pretty much. But when it began to serve the really life-threatening interests was when he entered into service to Pharaoh directly. And of course, ultimately, he became a very good picture of Yeshua himself, did he not?
Mm-hmm.
The Savior of the world. So that period from 17 through 20 is kind of preparation period. So in Chronicles, it talks about a king named Rehoboam. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Who is he?
Let's see.
Who is his father?
Was it Solomon?
Yes, it was Solomon.
Okay.
Rehoboam was Solomon's son. He became king. And he ruled for 17 years, by the way.
Oh, really?
But what kind of a guy was he?
Not a good guy.
What did he do?
I don't remember what it said he did. It followed in the way.
Well,
No.
when they made him king, he got some advice from the elders of the country.
Yeah, I remember this.
What did the elders say to him?
They said, you said you got to come in cracking that whip.
No, the elders didn't say
Oh,
that.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I had that wrong. The elders said you need to be gentle with these people, so they'll follow you to the end.
Yes.
But his friends, his peers,
The guys he grew up with.
yeah, they said, "No, man, you got to come in here cracking that whip."
So
and
these
be
were the
mean."
young guys.
Yeah.
And you might say they were like the 17-year-olds. They were
Yeah.
they were full-grown men, but they weren't up to the period where it's time to really begin serving the country. So
it was just speculation.
Instead of serving their interests in God, they're serving selfish interests. And you might say that Rehoboam was just a spoiled brat.
Yeah.
And so Jeroboam, now there's another guy named Jeroboam. You know who he was? Sounds almost like Rehoboam, but slightly different. Jeroboam.
Yeah. I don't rightly know how to sort those guys out because I remember I just hadn't read it in so long. Both of them were bad, right?
No, well, not quite so much. Jeroboam was he eventually became the king of northern Israel.
Right.
But he came to Rehoboam and presented an
Rehoboam
offering
was
to him
Judah.
and said, "Look, if you treat us right, we'll be your servants. We'll serve you." And then Rehoboam said, "No way," And he said, "My father chastised you with whips. I'll chastise you with scorpions."
Right.
So you think you had it rough before? Wait till you get what I'm going to bring. So Jeroboam said, "What part do we have with you anymore?" And he split the country, and the country went into civil war.
Israel. Yeah.
Civil war and divided the country. And they never got over that until after the return from Babylonian Persian captivity.
Yeah.
So Rehoboam's attitude brought down
Divided the
chaos
nation.
into Israel.
Yeah.
So 17 can represent preparation to serve God, or it can also represent descending into chaos through pride and a resistance to serve God.
Huh.
So that side of 17, like many of the numbers, can have a positive side, but it can also mean something very negative. So 17 is kind of a test period. Are you going to serve God or not? If you want to serve God, He'll prepare you to be able to do that. If you don't want to, you'll just bring disaster. And that's what happened with Rehoboam when he was 17. Now another 17 is when Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years. How did Jacob get into Egypt?
Oh, during the famine?
Yeah. When the famine happened, remember, Joseph became Pharaoh's viceroy, and he brought Jacob and the rest of the family down there to Pharaoh, or to Egypt. And how many people went to Egypt? It says how many went.
70.
70. What's 70?
7 times 10, so it's
Yeah.
perfect number times the authority of God.
Yes. So you take the perfection and multiply it by God's authority, what do you have? So, but when they went to Egypt, they were just a big family is what they were, right?
Yeah.
They're all relative to each other, but they weren't a nation, they were just a family. But just like when Adam was created with Eve, and he had a couple of sons, they became a family, but they didn't become a nation until a long time later, did they?
Right.
What's the difference between a family and a nation?
Size. Size, organization, king, law, land.
Yeah, all those things, that's right. So, Israel is the nation. Where was Israel born?
As a nation?
Yeah, where were they born?
They were born in Egypt.
In Egypt, that's right. And Egypt is a picture of this, of the enslaved world of evil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything that slaves people. And what did the people do while they were in Egypt?
They did slave stuff.
They did slave stuff. Did they have any choice?
No,
Why not?
because they were slaves.
Because they're slaves, exactly. What do slaves do?
What the master says.
That's right, and they have no choice. They're not ever offered a choice, are they?
Right.
Just say, this is what you will do, and you must do it. You have to do it. You can't not do it. You have to. So that's what they were. But that's where they were born. So the Lord says that He came into the world to seek and save what was lost. So what does He do with those who are lost?
Saves them.
Yeah. And He told Nicodemus, here's what has to happen in order to be saved. What?
Got to be born again.
Was Israel born again?
Yeah.
They were born in Egypt one time, but they were born again somewhere else. Where were they born then?
In the promised land.
Well, when was the last time they ever referred to as Egyptian slaves?
Right there in Egypt.
Well, what happened that changed their title from Egyptian slave to God's people?
God's calling on them.
What happened? It changed everything.
They cried out. He heard their voice.
He came when He heard their voice, but what happened? What did He do?
He took them out
How did He take them out?
with his hand.
Yeah, but if you saw them, how'd they get out of there? How'd they get out of Egypt?
Walked right out of there.
Where'd they go to get out?
They walked through the sea.
Through the Red Sea.
Yeah.
As on this side of the Red Sea, they were Egyptian slaves. When they got to the other side, who are they on the other side?
God's people.
Yeah, that's the change point, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't a thing in 1 John it says, if you've become one of the Lord's people, you've crossed over from death into life.
Mm-hmm.
So on this side of the Red Sea, they were in the place of death. On the other side, they've crossed over in life. What does Hebrew mean? The word Hebrew.
Crossover.
Those who have crossed over, or those from the other side. That's what it means. So here is Jacob. He lived in Egypt, and his family lived there, and all the Israelites who became the nation were born in Egypt, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And so then they crossed over, and they were born again. But we realized that where did Jacob die? Where was he when he died?
He was still in Egypt.
Yeah, he died in Egypt. And his instruction before he died was, carry me back to the land. So he made that cycle back to the beginning place, because that's where he was really from. It was from the land that became Israel. At the time he was born in the land, what was the name of the land?
Canaan?
Called Canaan, wasn't it? And the Canaanites, they weren't nice guys either. They were all idolaters, weren't they? So the land by its original name was Canaan, but God changed the name of the land even, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Made it into Israel. So Jacob was there for 17 years. So the number 17 has something to do with the time spent being prepared to really be what God ever meant anybody to be. And of course, the age 20 is a picture of coming up to that point where you're now able to say, now a 20-year-old is hardly a veteran, is he?
Right.
But when you go into the Army, you don't go in as a hero. You go in as a private trainee, a recruit.
Right.
But what is expected of you when you go in?
Grow into a soldier.
You're going to grow into it, and so that's what the training is all about. So the letter Pe is the 17th letter, but it has a numeric value of 80.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it is about 80?
Well, it's 2 40s. 40 is a trial period.
Okay.
A test.
You know how old Moses was when he talked to God at the burning bush?
He was 80.
He was 80. So what did he do during the first 40 years of his life? The first 40 years.
He was there in the court of Egypt.
So what was he doing?
Yeah. Well, he had it pretty good. He was living like a son of Egypt.
Okay. So he was learning Egypt, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was learning all about their culture, about their military. He was learning about how to speak Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
What did he look like? If you could have seen him, what would he look like?
Like all the other Egyptians.
He looked like an Egyptian, wouldn't he? He'd be dressed in Egyptian gear. His hairstyle, everything about him would look Egyptian, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Indistinguishable.
Yeah. And so if you saw him, you'd think, oh, just another Egyptian, or maybe not just another one, but one of a very high office, very high position. But there was something else he was learning in Egypt that was very important. And you think what it might be, something had to do with his ultimate life. He found it in Egypt.
Well, he learned, I'm sure he learned law and order and
Egyptian law and order, right?
Right, exactly. Which is
well
tyrannical.
What good is Egyptian law and order going to do towards saving the world? It's based on human reasoning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can human reasoning save the world?
No.
Politicians live on that idea, don't they? All
That's right.
lawyers do. So, yeah, he learned that. But what did he do that was really important, that really valuable, that he needed to know?
Talk about that first 40 years?
Yes, during that 40 years. But where was he born anyway?
He was
Moses.
born in a slave camp.
Born in Egypt, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And what was the rule, the local Egyptian rule at the time?
They were supposed to kill him.
Kill the little guys, the males.
Yeah.
And he would have been killed except for one thing.
Yeah, his maidens who were not carrying out the
Well, the
man
midwives
did.
were not killing. The first order had gone out when a male child is born, the midwives are to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't doing it. Why not?
Because they respected God.
Yes. So then a new order came out.
Mm-hmm.
What was the new order?
Throw him in the river?
Throw him in the river. So now here's Moses. He's born. He would qualify for one to be thrown in the river, would he not?
Yeah. So they technically threw him in the river, but there was a boat sitting there. So.
Well, who took charge? Who saved him?
Well, his mom did.
His mother.
Yeah.
What'd she do?
She made that ark for him.
Did she make it for him the day he was born?
She probably made it before he was born.
What were they supposed to do the day he's born?
Throw him in the river.
But it says she kept him for a while. She hid him until he'd gotten up a little bit and it was no longer possible to keep him hidden because he's probably come up to a little age where he'd be more likely to move around, make noise, stuff like that. It's hard to hide him.
Yeah.
So maybe he was 2, 3 years old. We don't know. But at any point, whenever it was time that she said she couldn't hide him any longer, but if he got found out, what would happen?
They'd probably kill you for it.
So what'd you do?
She put him in the river and watched out for him.
Well, she took a basket first and waterproofed it with something that's translated pitch or tar.
Yeah.
Natural tar is like a thick waterproof stuff. You could rub it on a wicker basket wouldn't hold water. It would just immediately sink. But if she waterproofed it inside and out with this tar, the word that's translated tar is the same word that's translated atonement.
No kidding.
The word atonement. So atonement is what makes you able to survive being put into the water.
How about that?
Without dying. If she'd have just put him in a wicker basket and put him in the river, what would have happened?
He was sunk.
He'd have drowned or something would have happened to him, but instead she waterproofed it with atonement.
How about that?
And put him in the river. And did she just walk away then and forget him or what?
No, she kept her eye on him.
Well, she had his sister, Miriam, was put in charge of keeping an eye on, so she's watching from a little ways away. Now, she can't be right there with him because that'd give him away. It was to be a hiding place, right? So I can picture her off a little ways up the river, a few yards away, where she keep an eye without being too close. Along comes Pharaoh's daughter with her servants to bathe, and she discovers this basket and sends one of her servants go get it. And what happened right then? They brought the basket back to the shore where the Pharaoh's daughter was, and I don't know if it had a lid on it or not. Maybe it did, but when they saw what was inside, what did the Pharaoh's daughter say?
Determined to keep him.
Why? It says very clearly why she did. First of all, she recognized this is one of the Hebrew babies. She saw that. Why did she know it was a Hebrew baby?
There was probably a lot of Hebrew babies in the river.
Maybe, but she saw this one, and her immediate comment, this is one of the Hebrews. There's something about what he looked like. The Egyptians probably had a different way of treating a baby where he'd look different, and he would look Egyptian. This one looks Hebrew. Now, this Pharaoh's daughter is obviously familiar with what's going on, and she knows a Hebrew from an Egyptian. So she sees it and she says this is a Hebrew. Now, according to the rule of her father, the Pharaoh, what should be done right then?
Kill him.
Now, is she under the rule of her father?
Yeah.
And the father says, kill him. What if she decides not to do that?
She's going sideways of her father.
If you go sideways with the father and Pharaoh's the father, what's likely to happen to you?
Well, your life's at risk.
So she's risking her life to even do something. Why did she do it? It says exactly why she
I
did
don't
it.
recall why.
She heard him cry.
Oh.
And when she heard him cry, something hit her, and she felt pity for him.
Hmm.
So the Lord said, the reason I've come to save my people is I've heard their cry.
Yeah.
So something about crying out gets God's attention, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he got the attention of that Pharaoh's daughter. Now, we don't know anything more about her. It never tells us anything more about her, except that she saved Moses. And she saved him because she heard the cry. She knew who he was. He was a Hebrew. What does it tell you about her?
She has a heart of compassion.
Would you think she's one of the Lord's people?
Yeah.
It doesn't say another word about her anywhere,
No.
other than just re-describing exactly what happened. But because of what did happen, it's hard to believe that she's not one of the Lord's people.
That's right.
So, anyway, here comes Moses. Now, the question was, what did Moses learn during those 40 years that was so important?
Maybe he learned compassion from his surrogate mom.
Compassion on who?
on the Hebrew people.
So what did he learn? He learned who those people are, didn't he?
Yeah.
Now, do you think the Egyptians were teaching them about being a Hebrew?
No.
What were they teaching them?
How to be an Egyptian.
How to be an Egyptian. But somehow he learned who his own people were. How do you know that he learned who his own people were?
As it said.
What did it say?
It said that when that time came, he saw that his people were being mistreated.
He went out to see how they were doing.
Yeah.
So somehow he got understanding. He didn't get it from the Egyptians. You can be sure the Egyptians' teachers would not teach him about being a Hebrew. But somehow he got the knowledge that he is really a Hebrew. Now, the first one we ever recognized that said he was a Hebrew was Pharaoh's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "This is a Hebrew." Do you suppose it's possible, we're only speculating, that she taught him that he's a Hebrew?
Yeah. I can see that.
Why would she bother?
Why would she bother?
Why would it matter to her to teach him that he's a Hebrew? Could turn the fan on, get a little more heat out. I think I know why she would
I'd
bother.
like to hear it.
Well, why'd she recognize him in the first place? Or why'd she decide to save him? She risked her life to save him.
Because something was happening in her heart.
And what was happening in her heart?
Compassion.
Where'd that come from?
It had to come from the Spirit of God.
It doesn't come from the Egyptians, does
No.
it? It doesn't come from Pharaoh. It comes from God.
Yeah.
God gave her a heart that cared about this, and I believe that may be why she would have taught him that he's a Hebrew.
Out of compassion.
So he grows up, and now at about age 40, somewhere very close to there, he decides one day to go out and see how his people are doing. Now, the Egyptians never told him that those are your people, those slaves. There's only one that we know of that we even have a reason to do it. It would be this one Pharaoh's daughter who already risked her life to save him the first time. Don't you think she'd be likely the one that would teach him, you're a Hebrew?
Mm-hmm.
And now he goes out to see how his Hebrew people are doing. And what happened when he went out to look?
You saw two of them in a fight?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, he saw the Egyptians mistreating them.
Saw a slave driver beating up
Yeah.
one of the Israelites. And what did Moses do?
He defended him to the point of death.
He killed that
killed
guy.
him, yeah.
Why would he kill him?
That's a tough one because he certainly put himself in danger.
Would you call Moses a murderer then?
Well, technically, yeah, he is, but he was protecting.
I said, would you call him a murderer?
What I call him?
Yeah.
No,
Why not?
because he was a protector.
You know, Romans said if you put to death the deeds of the body, you'll live. So you put something to death, that makes you a murderer, right? So if you put to death the deeds of the body by the Spirit, you are a murderer. If you're going to use that logic, you want to go there?
No.
What was this Egyptian doing that Moses went into that killing rage?
He was using his whip and authority to
do what?
Suppress people.
Yeah. So the evil deeds of the body that the Romans was talking about that need to be put to death, they're doing the same thing to you that Egyptian was doing to one of his people. And Moses said he's going to die for that, so he kills him. All right. Now he knew that if Pharaoh found out that he killed one of his slave drivers, what would that do?
That would put him in jeopardy with Pharaoh.
So he hides this guy. It says he buried him. They're probably somewhere where it was sandy. He scooped out a thing and buried the guy. And I can picture him looking around, making sure nobody saw this. And he thought he got away with it. Now, of course, it was, if you put to death the deeds of the body, as it says in Romans, the deeds of the flesh, is the enemy going to like that?
No.
So if the enemy knew what you're doing and found out about it, you'd be in danger for doing that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So anyway, Moses buries this guy. Now the next day he goes back out there again. Why did he go the second time? Every time you read something about the second time, what's going on?
That's the one that really matters, right?
That's the one that has the greatest impact. When God says something twice, the second time is the one you want to really pay attention. He goes out the second time. Why did he go again?
Well, it's got to be connected to the first one. But
Okay, why did he go the first time?
to see about his people.
Want to see how I was doing. What did he see that was going on that first time?
Abuse.
They're being abused. They're being mistreated, being treated cruelly. So then why did he go the second time?
There could have been, I would say, for the same reason, but he also probably had some fear and was checking in on his
Well, let's go back to this. He went the first time
yeah.
to find out how the people were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's assuming that he didn't know until then, until he went out. But he went out to check on them, and he found out they're being oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
What did that do to how he felt? First time, it was almost like curiosity. I'll go see how they're doing. Now, how does he feel after seeing one of them being beaten up?
He's angry.
He's angry, and he's
compassionate.
He cares about his people. He knows they're being abused.
Yeah.
So why does he go the second time?
Probably to see if he could do something about
I want to do something about
Yeah.
this. What can I do to help him?
Yeah.
I want to save him from this abuse.
Because that's when he had his interaction with the...
Now he goes out the second time to see how they're doing, and what does he see right away?
He sees two of his Israelite brothers
Both of them,
fighting.
they're both his guys, and what are they doing?
They're fighting each other.
They're fighting each other. All right? It was bad enough when the enemy is oppressing his people, but when his own people are fighting each other,
Ooh.
it's almost worse than the enemy, isn't it?
Yeah.
He killed the enemy for doing it, but now he comes back, and now does he intend to kill one of these Israelites?
No.
But he's going to break up the fight.
Yeah.
He came over there and tried to separate them, and what happened then?
The Israelites threw yesterday in his face. Said,
At least one of them
Yeah,
said,
one of them did.
One of them said,
What
are you going to kill me like you did that Egyptian?
Yeah.
All right. So what happens when the Lord himself tries to break up the fight between the Lord's people who are always arguing about everything? What happens when the Lord comes to put a stop to that? All too often. Well, what happened when Moses tried to break up the fight between these two guys?
They just put the blame on Moses.
You're going to do to me what you did to the Egyptian, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to murder me like you murdered him. So when the Lord comes to part people, their proud position of rebellion will always come back hammering on God. You're gonna take that guy's side against me. You know, I'm the guy that was right and he's the guy that was wrong, and so here comes that same old rebellion. But that rebellion, that Israelite, and he was one of the Israelites, he was one that Moses had gone out with the intent of trying to help him, wasn't he? That's why he went. He wanted to do something about the oppression. But what did he get? He got kicked in the face by one of his own people.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, as soon as he heard that, what did Moses think?
He's like, uh-oh, I'm found out.
I got to get out of here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because they know. So the secret's out. He thought he had hidden that one guy, but now he knows I'm caught. So all I can do is get out of here. So where does he go?
Midian.
Where's Midian?
Out in the wilderness.
Where is it?
The Sinaitic Peninsula.
No, it's not the Sinai.
It's not?
No, it's Arabia.
Okay.
The Apostle Paul said Midian is Arabia. Apostle Paul is a highly educated man. He knows where Arabia is. Yeah. He knows the difference between Arabia and the Sinai Peninsula, which is part of Egypt.
Way further south.
Yeah, farther east. Arabia is way across the Red Sea from Sinai. So anyway, he goes over there to Mount Horeb, which is later called the Mountain of God, and there is where he came to the burning bush. Remember that story?
Yeah.
Now,
age 80.
But he's still 40. He just killed this Egyptian. Now he's 40 years old. He goes to Arabia, and the most important thing he learned while he was in Egypt for 40 years was what?
Compassion.
For what? What did he learn there? He learned who his people are and what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
That's what he learned in Egypt. All the knowledge about Egypt and about being an Egyptian and all their rules and their ideas of doing things and everything may have been useful, but the most important thing he learned was who his people are and what needs to be done for them. So that was 40. Now he's 40 years old and he goes to Arabia. Now what's he going to do for the next 40 years?
Learn how to be a shepherd.
He's going to herd sheep, right?
Yeah.
Learn all about sheep.
Yeah.
Now he's learned all about Egypt. He's learned who his people are. Now he's going to learn about sheep. Why does he need to learn about sheep for 40 years? Why does he need to learn about sheep?
Well, are we crossing the metaphor barrier to say God's people are sheep?
Yeah. What's he going to do about these sheep? Who are these sheep and what's going on?
I'm sorry, that guy's distracting me with that machine he's got. What is that thing? The real sheep or the people's sheep?
Well, he went out there and herded sheep for 40 years.
Right.
Is that because God's so concerned about sheep that he needs to take his man and spend 40 years of his life herding sheep? Lots of people can herd sheep.
No, it was a practice of, I don't know, humility, I suppose.
Well, for the first 40 years, you learned everything you need to know about the pagan world, Egypt.
Yeah.
And you learn who his people are and what their problems are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the next 40 years, he's going to spend herding sheep. Why?
Crowd management.
Lord wants him to know all about sheep for 40 years.
Yeah.
Does he learn how to shear sheep? Does he learn how to pick their burrs out of their wool and learn them all about how to feed them, where to the water, and all that good stuff?
Protect them from the enemy, from the...
But anybody can herd
animals.
sheep. There's been millions of sheep herders around.
Yeah.
You think God would take 40 years of a man had to herd sheep? That's all that important. He needs to spend 40 years of his life herding sheep. What he's going to do, he says, I'm going to send you out to herd sheep that really matter to God, and that's my people. And you're going to have to learn all about them to do it. Now, during that 40 years herding sheep, he did probably just about everything that any shepherd's ever done, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
He learned how to protect the sheep. He learned how to take care of them when they're sick or hurt. He learned how to keep them in line. He learned how to where the water is and the grass and all that stuff. You know, the shepherd, Psalm 23, kind of tells you what the good shepherd does. Moses is a good shepherd. Did he put his own life in a risk at any time for these sheep?
Probably every day.
But the Lord didn't do that for him just so that he'll know about sheep. He said, I'm going to send you to do something that's like herding sheep, only has nothing to do with sheep. It's my people.
Right.
So the real sheep are the Lord's people, aren't they?
Yeah, just like you
And
told
for
the apostles.
For 40 years, he learned who those sheep are and what they do and what they're like. But during that first 40 years, while he was learning in Egypt, what did he do to save his people during that 40 years in Egypt?
Nothing.
He did protect one guy by killing an
One
Egyptian,
guy, yeah.
and he broke up a fight between two others and got himself sent out of the country over it. So when it comes down to it, just like your word, nothing. He didn't do a thing for the people to save them during that first 40 years.
Right.
The second 40 years, he's herding sheep. What's he done for the Lord's people during that time?
No.
Nothing. Learning how to be a good shepherd, that's fine.
Yeah, it's
But-
good, and it was
But
a career builder.
what could anybody say? Boy, I'm sure thankful for the time that Moses herded sheep for 40 years. That did so much for me. Could you say that?
No.
But it did do something. What did it do? Was it important to do it?
Yeah.
Was the first 40 years important?
Yeah.
How about the second 40?
Yeah.
Why was it important? What was going on in those 40 years, those 80 years?
Well, he was walking with the Lord.
But he's just learning things, right? Learning about Egypt, learning about sheep.
Yeah.
What did he do for him? How
Well-
many of the Lord's people could say, I'm one of the Lord's people because of what happened to Moses during his time in Egypt or during his time in Arabia?
Well, if he had transferable skills for helping people out in the wilderness.
Who could say my salvation is based on what Moses did during his 40 years in Arabia?
Nobody says that.
Because that's what was going on in that time. Something very important. God was doing it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Doing what?
Well, preparing him.
Getting him prepared. That's exactly it. Getting him ready to do what he really brought him out to do.
Yeah.
Everything that happened that mattered was in the last 40 years. So at the time, Moses was 80 years old. Pei means the number is 80. All right? So according to the sages in Israel, they say that the year 80 is the time when you've reached the learning epitome, or you might say you've learned what you need to do in order to do what you were meant to do. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be 80 years old. That's a parable as well. But 80 could represent that time you've learned where you came from, Egypt. Moses was born in Egypt. When you learn where you come from, what have you actually learned? You learn where you came from. What have you actually learned relative to that?
Who you are.
Who you are and why you're like you are.
Mm-hmm.
And what do the Egyptians need? What do they need? What does anybody in the pagan world need?
And you know who God is.
They need salvation, don't they?
Yeah.
You learn how you got to be where you are and why you needed salvation and why all your people need it. And during the second 40 period of the herding sheep, what's going on there?
Preparations.
Preparation for handling the real sheep. So when they reach this point at 80, they're saying, okay, you've learned what you need to learn about why you need salvation, what salvation will do, just like herding. Now, when you're herding sheep, by the way, what's the purpose of herding sheep? What's the reason for even handling sheep?
Well,
Why would anyone do it?
for the meat, for the milk, for the wool.
For taking them into whatever the end result, their destiny.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that The sheep may not be too happy about that. We don't know. But go back to Psalm 23 is a shepherd's psalm. What is the ultimate goal of the shepherd's psalm? The ultimate goal.
The ultimate goal is to be watched out after by the shepherd.
No, that's not the goal. That's the 40-year period.
Okay.
What's the goal? Where are you going with this?
To the house of the Lord.
I'm going to dwell how long for the next
Forever.
40 years? Forever. So what's the forever destiny of the Lord's people?
The house of God.
So the purpose of having sheep is to take them to their destiny. Now we realize in an earthly sense it's a 40-year period, so their destiny is not forever. But it's a type and a picture, a parable of taking the Lord's people into their ultimate destiny, which is to dwell forever in the house of the Lord. That's where it's going. And during the 40-year period, you're in the valley of the shadow of death. What goes on in the valley of death?
Death.
Death goes. But also it's a place where you're fed and you're watered and you're prepared, you're comforted, your head's anointed with oil, which is a good preservative of making you feel well. Your cup is running over with the blessing of the Lord, all during while you're in this 40-year time. So all that's what the shepherd's doing for you. But the goal is that you'll be taken to the house of the Lord where you're going to be forever. So that 40 years is taking you up to a point. So you get to number 80, and the sages say, okay, now it's time. You've learned everything. Now get to work. Now you do it. So the first time Moses ever did anything that was really directly for the people of God was what?
Taking them out of Egypt.
No, he didn't take them out of Egypt. Well, he did, but that wasn't the first time. It was after he was 80 years old. Well, I'll go back. I kind of misstated that. Yes, you're right. Because at 80 years old is when he met the Lord at the burning bush. And there he heard pay means the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean just mouth or eating thing, but it means you're speaking. You know, when Yeshua met Satan in the wilderness, and Satan said, make the stones into bread, what did the Lord say? The well-known passage.
Man cannot live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God.
Okay. Now, he didn't say you don't eat bread. He said you don't eat bread alone. Now, if that's all you got is just bread, that's fine, but that's not enough. You can't live just on that. You have to have also what?
Yeah. You got to have meat, vegetables, and...
No, it doesn't say that.
Okay. Keep to the passage. Got to live by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God.
All right. So, pay is the mouth or the word that's speaking from the mouth. You know, the Hebrews call a Passover meal a Seder. I take that back. They do call it a Seder. But they also call Passover. It's been translated Passover, but the word is Pesach.
Yeah.
Pay. What does pay mean?
The mouth.
Sak means speak. The mouth speaks. Huh. That's what Pesach means. So
they blow a shofar, which with your mouth?
Yes. They've translated it into the word Passover, but the word really means the mouth is speaking.
Huh.
And the Lord said, you can't just live by the Seder. Seder is all about food that you eat, isn't it? You can't just eat stuff. If all you do is the religious ceremony of eating a good meal, that's fine, but you can't live on that alone. If that's all you got, you're doing the entire Seder Pesach ceremony, observing all the regulations and rules, eating the right stuff. If that's all you got, you're starving yourself to death. You're malnutrition, because you got to also have the word that comes from the mouth of God, which is the letter pay. And so that's vital, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you don't get that, what good does the religious service do? And there are thousands of well-meaning Jews that are doing the Pesach, eating a Seder, without getting the word that comes from the mouth of God. And that's sad. That shouldn't be, but that's what happened. So anyway, when Moses was 80 years old, and he saw this burning bush out there. He was herding sheep at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he says, why did he confront the burning bush? It says why he did.
Because he'd never seen a sight like that.
It's curious. I'll go see what's going on. I've never seen a bush burn, and it doesn't burn up. Goes over and sees, and then what happens?
He heard the voice of God.
He heard the word that came from the mouth of God, did he not?
Yeah.
And so what happened at the burning bush? Did God reach out and touch him?
Not physically.
Did he do anything to him?
He called out to him.
All he did was talk to him, didn't he?
Yeah.
And what did Moses do with God?
He talked back.
Talked back. So all that burning bush thing was about a conversation between God and Moses. You go to Genesis 1, the creation. It says, God said, let there be. And then another place, God said this. And God said, 8 times it says, God said in Genesis 1. What's 8?
It's the new beginning.
New beginning. So the words that God said is the number 8, which means new beginning. So every word that proceeds from the mouth of God takes you toward a new beginning, does it not? At age 80, Moses was about to enter into a new beginning. Up until now, he learned all about Egypt and learned all about sheep. But now he's going to begin to do something that he really was made to do, which was to save the people, right? His time in Egypt and his time herding sheep for those 80 years didn't do one thing for anybody to save him, did it?
Well,
it was
like
a step
preparation.
in the yeah, but it didn't do it. Nothing
Right.
happened. It was just
Right.
preparation.
Right.
You know, you can prepare for anything. You can prepare for some project, get together all the tools, study the map, plan the action. But until you actually go ahead and do it, you haven't done anything, have you?
Right.
Preparation is just getting you ready to do what you have to do. So at age 80, God was saying, okay, it's time for you now to go into action. It's time to do something. And what do? You go down to Egypt to Pharaoh, and what are you to do when you get to Pharaoh?
Tell him to let my people go.
Say things, right?
Yeah.
Tell him something.
Yeah.
Are you to go down there and strike him with anything?
No.
Are you to attack him?
No.
Are you to threaten him with anything?
No.
Just tell him things. That's all. And where is that? What's going to tell him? Tell him what?
Tell him to let the people of Israel go.
Yeah, but what are you really telling him when you tell him that?
You're telling him, I'm about to take your slaves and make them free.
You can't live by bread alone. You can only live by the word that comes from the mouth of God. So what did Moses tell Pharaoh?
The words of God.
Yeah, the word that came from the mouth of God. That's right. So God didn't tell Moses, just go down and tell him anything you feel like telling him.
Right.
What did he say to tell him?
So what I tell you.
Tell him what I tell you to say. So when Moses spoke to Pharaoh, he was really the spokesman for God himself. In fact, Moses didn't want to do it. He argued with God. I can't do it. I just stutter when I talk. Yeah. And so how can I do that?
So he gave him Aaron.
So he said, okay, here's Aaron. Now, Aaron obviously was a good public speaker. He knows how to talk. We'll let him do it. And so, but he says, you will tell Moses or tell Aaron what to say, and he'll say it. So it's still going to come from God, is it not? So here's Moses at 81, ready to go now to do the work. And he goes down and tells Pharaoh what has to be done. When the Israelite men reach age 80, they have them read Psalm 81. You know what Psalm 80 is all about?
No.
Psalm 80 is full of words like, restore us, God, save us. Save us by your right hand. Psalm 80 is a cry to God. We need to be saved. We're like the slaves in Egypt. We need to be rescued. That's Psalm 80. You read Psalm 80, it's all about Israel crying out to God. And the Lord said, I've heard their cry. So now I'm going to send you.
An answer.
So now you're going to read Psalm 81. They read Psalm 81. And Psalm 81 is going on and on about how the Lord is going to save his people. So Here's Moses at age 81. Now he's he's no longer in preparation. He's no longer learning about Egypt or learning about sheep. He's going to go do what he's been taught to do. And what is he going to do? What did Moses do while he was in the next 40 years? The last 40.
Shepherded God's people.
And if you could see him there, every time you saw him, what would he be doing? Actually doing.
Talking to people.
He'd be talking to the people.
Yeah.
So, because what would he say to them?
Whatever they needed to hear.
What do they need to hear?
They needed to hear the word of God.
They need to hear the word that comes from the mouth of God. That's pay.
Yeah.
So pay is God speaking to his people for their salvation.
Yeah.
And it's symbolized by the number 80. 17 is a picture of the preparation time, being from the time it's beginning to think about, now it's time to learn how to serve the people. And it's pictured in Moses, the first 40, learning what the problem was, why they need salvation. The next 40, herding sheep. How do you take people into salvation? And it's pictured by Psalm 23. And then finally, the last 40 is take them through the wilderness and ultimately to the Jordan River, where Moses was not able to go in. Now, remember we talked about age 20. What's age 20?
This is where you're counted for the military service.
You're at the point where it's time for you to enter into service. But there's another thing about 20. When they got to the Jordan River, after traveling for 40 years through the wilderness, what happened at the Jordan River? It's really important. It has to do with 20.
20. It was time for them to serve.
Not at the Jordan River. Not what it says.
They made a memorial to...
What it is has to do with 20. Has to do with 20. Remember, the time for 20 was the time it's time to be about serving the country.
Yeah.
But he said at the Jordan River that anyone over the age of 20 would never go into the promised land.
Right.
Why not?
Because they were walking in unbelief.
Yeah, and they rebelled against God. All those original ones. The only ones that weren't included was Joshua and Caleb.
Yeah.
They were allowed to come in because they did not rebel. Everybody else rebelled over the age of 20. So it says at the Jordan River that anyone over the age of 20 would never cross that river into Canaan. They all died on the Arabian side. So what was the average age of those who crossed the Jordan River into Canaan?
40? No, more than.
Says if you're
young
over 20 years old, you're not going in.
Right.
They had to all be under 20, didn't they?
Okay, yeah.
Well, if you take 6 million people, or however many there weren't, 20, maybe probably 2 million or something.
No, they were all under.
They're
40.
all under 20. What's the average age going to be like?
10.
Maybe 10 years old, huh?
Yeah.
Sometimes they were called the children of Israel. I don't know if that meant had to do with their age, but they were all young.
Yeah.
The only ones that were over 20 was Joshua and Caleb. Those two were over. How old was Caleb, do you remember?
It was like your age, right? 85?
Exactly, 85. Now, he had come past the age 80. So what happens at 80?
The mouth of God.
Well, up till age 80, you've been preparing. You've been learning about Egypt, you've been learning about sheep. What happens at 80?
You're going to do what you're going to do.
Time to get with it, right? So here's Caleb. Now, Caleb had been offered one time before to get with it. When?
when he was 40.
And what happened back then?
His partners didn't agree that God could do what he said he would.
There were 12 spies. And remember, 12 is the number of the Lord working with his people.
Yeah.
The Lord works with his people when they don't rebel. But those 12, they all came back from they had been, in fact, spying out the land for 40 days. 40 is another very important number. Yeah. They've been looking over the land for 40 days. Why'd they do it anyway?
Because the Lord invited them to.
Lord told them to.
Yeah.
To send in some, and what was the purpose given for going in?
To take the land.
No.
Oh, to just spy. Just to look out.
For what? For why? It says exactly the purpose. Why do you need to go in there?
To see what they were up against.
Doesn't say it.
To see what land the Lord brought them. I don't know then.
It says to see if what I'm telling you is true.
Oh.
So that wasn't to check out the land, it was to check out God. To see if he's really telling us the truth. They all came back with exactly the same report. What was the same report?
What it looked like.
God said it's a land flowing with milk and honey, all right. And it is.
Yeah.
In fact, he even brought up some samples of the fruits and stuff to show.
And then they had a but.
Yes. They added the word but.
Yeah.
What happens when you say but after something is said?
You negate your agreement.
You just cancel everything that just been said, right? Yeah. So they said, yes, it is flowing with milk and honey, but.
Yeah.
But what?
But I don't think we can do this.
Why not?
Because it's scary over there. They have giants.
Yes. So those giants are greater than God, and therefore God cannot give us the land. It's a total loss. We're done for. Except Joshua and Caleb. They said the same thing, but instead of saying but, they said and. It's a land flowing with money, and there's giants. And then what would be the next words after the word and?
And I can't wait to see what God's going to do with those giants.
Or we could say, so what?
And so
what?
Yeah.
Because we know who God is, and God will fight our battle for us. Yeah. So here's Caleb now. He was ready to go right then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He wanted to see the giants fall, but he didn't get to do it because of their rebellion.
Yeah.
So he and Joshua both had to walk in the wilderness for the next 40 years. Do you think they were happy in that walk?
No.
I mean, they were at peace with God, but certainly they always felt we missed a wonderful opportunity there. Yeah. So now they get back to the Jordan River, and after they've crossed, Caleb goes to Joshua, who is now the leader, took Moses' position, and he goes to Joshua and he says, brother, I want to go back to where we saw those giants 40 years ago. And he said, my strength now is just the same as it was back then. But he's 85 years old. What do you think he looked like when he was 85?
Probably looked like he did when he was 40.
No, he didn't.
He looked like an 85-year-old.
He looked like an old, crotchety 85-year-old guy like me. Can't hardly walk across the parking lot without a cane. He'd fall down flat.
Yeah.
He has little strength, little ability, but he said, my strength is just the same as it was 45 years ago.
Because his strength was in the Lord.
My strength was God back then, and it's still the same today. Yeah. If he was relying on his own personal physical strength, he'd be dead meat before those giants, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
But he said, I want to go back. Why do I want to go back there?
Because I'm ready to get with it.
And I want to see what God will do.
Yeah.
So here's Caleb. He's 5 years beyond that 80-year point. But he says, haven't had an opportunity again since 40-some years ago. I want to go make it happen. Is he ready to go out?
Yeah.
Now, we don't read any more about him after that, other than he did get a deal about getting some land for his daughters and stuff.
Old mountaintop.
But as far as fighting giants, we don't hear any more. But we know this. Were the giants a threat to Caleb?
No.
Not in his attitude, because he knew that God was the power he was going on. Just like when David went after Goliath. Now, David was about 17 years old when he went to Goliath. And what did David say?
What did he say?
Yeah. He went after Goliath.
He said, the Lord is going to give me into
Yeah.
give
He
you
told
into my
Saul,
hand.
remember, he told Saul, he said, I was herding my father's sheep, and a lion came, and another time a bear came. What happened?
The Lord gave me.
I killed them both.
Yeah.
And he said, the same God who gave me the lion and the bear will give me this giant. So who's going to kill the giant?
The Lord.
That's what Joshua was saying, or Caleb, I mean. So David went out there, and he told Goliath, he yelled at him, you defied my God, and because of that, you're going to die, more or less, to those words, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Goliath said, come here, I'll feed you to the birds. And David said, no, I'm going to feed you to the birds. And the same God that you're defying is going to give me you.
Yeah.
And, of course, so was there any arrogance in that?
No.
He was a young 17-year-old. But what was he doing as a 17-year-old?
He's speaking up for God.
And remember, 17 through 20 is the time of getting ready to do a service. Now, what he was doing, killing Goliath, was in preparation for being the king of Israel. He wasn't a king then, was he?
No.
He was just a shepherd boy, 17 years old. In fact, when he went out there to where his brothers were at that point, what'd they have to say about him? Remember, there again, the reason
What are you doing here?
Yeah, the reason he went there in the first place, because his father sent him. Jesse told him, go see how your brother, and that's the time he took him some food, some bread and cheese or something. And the father, again, sent him out there because he was concerned for his sons. So he sends David out there. Was there any evidence that David tried to not do that or tried to rebel against?
No.
He went out eagerly. And when he got there, his brothers insulted him, didn't they? What did they say? They did insult him.
What are you doing? I forget exactly.
Had
what
to do
they
with
said.
sheep. You ought to be out there taking care of those few sheep. You even put a few, like your job is so unimportant. Just a few of them. You know,
a handful of sheep out there.
A few sheep out there. Why aren't you out there taking care of them? You just came out there because you want to get in on the glory of being in a battle. Now, David didn't have any idea about that, did he? When he went out there, what do you think he was doing?
His brother's a favor.
Thought he's doing a favor. Why?
Because Dad asked me to.
Because Father sent me, and I'm obeying my Father. And the whole purpose of my going out there was for their benefit, right?
Yeah.
But when he got there, he got an insult. And he first found out about Goliath. He didn't know anything about Goliath. Nothing had been said about him. But Goliath had come out every morning for 40 days to shout this challenge. 40 is an important number. It always indicates a time of, 40 days usually means a time of dying, death. And, of course, this whole thing was going to be about death. But Goliath was threatening death, and death was going to be the solution to the problem here, wasn't it? Remember, we said that the word shalom means death to the thing that's causing the trouble. Mm-hmm. So here's David goes out. He doesn't know anything about Goliath, but Goliath comes out that morning just as he got there, apparently. He came out, his brothers insulted him, and then Goliath comes out, yells out his insult. And David said, what'll happen to whoever takes out the giant now? Remember what the giant's challenge was? What did he say?
He was going to do a one-on-one battle with...
Well, how did he word it? What did he actually say? You're on it, but how did he word it?
Send me your best soldier?
He didn't say best. He said, send a soldier out there to fight me. And then?
And then he said, this will be the battle that... I don't know how
he said, we'll fight, and whoever wins the battle, the other side will become your servants.
Yeah.
So it was really a challenge to Saul to have a battle with him through some soldier.
Yeah.
So what did Goliath expect to see happen?
He probably wanted to see Saul come out.
Or some soldier.
Yeah.
You know, Saul was a great soldier. He was a thug of a man, but he was a good, powerful soldier. He knew how to fight.
Yeah.
His son Jonathan was a wonderful one.
Yeah.
And he probably had a lot of good soldiers. A lot of them were veterans. They were been through many battles, and they were tough guys. They didn't have any wimps out there. And so Goliath expected to see one of them come out there, whichever one. If they did, if one of them came out, what do you think would happen?
They would have been slaves again.
Well, Saul would have killed whoever he sent.
Yeah.
He's a powerful man. Saul had nobody that could fight him. Neither could he himself. In fact, Saul was absolutely just frustrated. He was terrorized by. In fact, the whole army was. They were just frightened when they heard Goliath come out. They were just sitting over there trembling. Yeah. There was a lot of good soldiers there, but there was none of them that could match Saul or Goliath. So then David says, "Well, I'll do it." When he found out remember what he asked the question, what will be the reward for whoever kills Goliath? What would they say? What will be the reward for the one that kills Goliath?
Oh, Saul's daughter.
That was one. He'd get Saul's daughter in marriage, and another thing.
I don't remember.
He'd be exempt from taxes.
No, I don't remember that one.
It's in there. So David said, "Okay, I'll do it." So, of course, somebody then went to Saul. Now, when the challenge came from Goliath, Saul didn't know what to do, did he? Did he have anybody volunteer to do it?
No.
Was he ready to do it?
No.
Nobody.
He was sitting in his tent.
He was just absolutely frightened.
Yeah.
So here comes somebody, and they said, "We found somebody who's willing to go out." So Saul said, "Okay, bring him in." So they bring this guy in, and here's this shepherd named David. He's about 17 years old. And he said, "I can go take down that giant." Saul said, "Not a chance," didn't he?
Right.
And he said, "He's a veteran soldier. There's no way you can take him down."
Right.
And, of course, from a human point of view, he was right, wasn't he?
Right.
There's nobody that could take Goliath down. So then David says, well, then he told Saul about the lion and the bear that God had taken down. He said, "The same God who gave me that will also give me this giant." So Saul says, "Well, at least wear my armor." Now, some people tried to picture David being a little kid. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that. I think he was 17. Most 17 years old are pretty much full grown, aren't they? Mm-hmm. I think he was a big guy. He'd been spending years out taking care of sheep, living in the rough outside. What did he look like?
He was, what does the scripture say? He was ruddy.
Well, that means sort of like sunburn.
Yeah.
And he's an outdoor guy. He looks tough, and he was tough.
Yeah.
He was not a little kid, and he wasn't a little wimp. So he was probably just as big as any other soldier, but he was only 17 years old, which means he's not quite reached the point where he's ready to serve. So he didn't look like that age. But Saul said, "Here, you could wear my armor now. If you put on Saul's armor, what will he look like then?"
Look like a soldier.
And he'd look like Saul, wouldn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Saul was a powerful soldier, he was a bad man, really, but he was a mighty soldier. There's no doubt about that. And the Philistines feared Saul. They knew that he is a very great danger to them, and they were afraid of him. But so if David went out there looking like Saul, then if he just approached their average Philistine, they'd be afraid of him. But he was approaching Goliath. So if he went out there wearing Saul's armor and faced Goliath, what would happen?
The Lord wouldn't have given him that fight.
Well, what would happen?
He would have been killed, and
Goliath would have killed him. And then all the others would have to be slaves, and they'd probably either kill them or enslave them.
Yeah.
So from a human point of view, there was no chance. And David said, "I can't go out there in your armor." And it's not because the armor was too big for him. Some people think it didn't fit him. It would have probably fitted him perfectly, but it would just mean that he's no better than Saul. And Saul was afraid of Goliath. So David said, I'm not going to go out there wearing Saul's fear. If I'm depending on Saul's armor for my protection, then I got no better chance against Goliath than anybody else, which would be zero, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So he says, I can't do that. So he goes out there without the armor, but did he have any armor?
He had the Ephesians 6 armor.
Yeah, he had the greatest armor there could ever be. And
Protection of God, like we talked about
yeah,
with Psalm.
and he had only
Psalm
one
91.
thing that we would call a weapon. What did he have for a weapon?
Well, besides the Spirit of God, he had a sling and rocks.
Yeah. But a sling was not meant to be a battle weapon. A sling would be something you'd hunt birds with, maybe,
Yeah.
or something like
Or
that.
make a noise in the bush to chase away a
Or you
predator.
throw a rock at a small creature, you could kill him. Might be like a hunting gun or something like that. But it was hardly what you'd call a battle weapon. And although it could be used, but that was not normally what you would do. And so
You don't take a sling to a knife fight. That's for sure.
right. That's right. Or you don't take a 22 revolver to a battle with Uzis or with 40 millimeter anti-aircraft guns or something. So he went out there with this sling, and of course, you know what happened then. But the whole point was that at 17, he was ready to move out to fight off this enemy. But that didn't make him a king either. In fact, he didn't come a king for some time later, did he?
Right.
In fact, it ultimately brought down Saul's wrath on him because Saul was ruled by jealousy, just like Joseph's brothers were and David's brothers were. Saul was also moved by envy and jealousy, and but it wasn't for a long time later that David really became the king. So in killing Goliath, he did something for the people. What did he do for the people by killing Goliath?
Well, he prevented them from going into slavery again.
Yeah.
Protected them.
But
Saved them.
It's just like Joseph and like these others. What he did for them was a physical benefit. He saved them from slavery by the Philistines at that point, or from a battle problem. But David's real purpose is not to save people from Goliath. What's David's real purpose? What is the real purpose of David? The real one that the whole world benefits from,
To be the mouth of God.
and to be the father of the one called the Son of David,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So he became the forerunner of Yeshua himself. That's the thing that saves the world.
Yeah.
You know, when all these guys that we read about, Jacob and Joseph and David and these different ones, they do things that benefit the earthly world in some way. But it's until they've passed through that 20 period where they've gone beyond 17 up into 20 that they're in a place where they can actually bring about their real purpose for being. So even the Lord himself, Yeshua, for the first 30 years of his life, we only know two things about him. Once he was born in Bethlehem, and a few things about that. The other time when he's 12 years old, went to the bar mitzvah. What else do you know about him during those 30 years? Nothing. But was he doing any good during those 30 years?
Yeah.
But we don't know anything about it because all it could recognize or represent maybe just be that time that he was being made ready to do what he came to do. The only thing we know that he really did that saves the world was the death, burial, resurrection. It happened all in 3 days. So can you see how that number 17 represents a period of time in which you do a lot of good things that help people, but the real purpose is entering into the service, represented by 20. And all these people that did great things, just like Noah built the ark. It took him how long to build that ark? Many, many years.
100, yeah.
But did that save anybody during those times?
No.
No. The time that saved it was during the period of the flood itself, and when they were in the ark, and the Lord protected them while they were in the ark. And of course, through that came ultimate salvation to the whole world. But the whole point of all these things, there was always kind of a time when they were just being made ready to do what they came to do, and the real thing they did happened during a very relatively small part of their life.
That's good. That's good.
So you can look at that number 17, and the number or the letter pay, and its numerical value of 80. That all those numbers and letters in there really picture how salvation works for us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
That's good. That's good.
Well, maybe it's time to go home for supper or something.
Can I go over there to Fred Meyer's real quick?
Sure you can.
Do you want to drive me over there? Or you want me
I'll
to
drive you over.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Turn this beast off for a sec.